about just the details of the case.
Sure.
What happened?
So we have a young lady. She was in her late 20s. She was at home with her husband, and she was accustomed to going out late at night because she had young kids at home. She was accustomed to going out late at night and doing her laundry. So she leaves the house in you would probably say the mid-evening.
11 o'clock, right? Her husband had gone to bed.
So then we find out that she went to go visit her mom and dad real quick, and then at the same time, we come to learn that she ends up at Beal's Laundromat in Lewiston, which is, I believe that's at the corner of Dumont Street and Lisbon Street, and it's another business today. I think Quality Glass, and but at the time it was Beal's Laundromat. So she's there in the early morning hours doing her laundry. There were several police officers who saw her doing the laundry late at night because, of course, you could drive by on Lisbon Street and take a glance off to the left, and you would kind of see through the pane glass windows that there were people inside and whatnot. So we have police officers that actually place her there up until about 2:30 in the morning. And about 4:55 in the morning, or just before 5 o'clock, she's discovered dead outside the laundromat. She had been beaten. And it's one of those cases where you look at after 45 years and you wonder how does this case go unsolved after 45 years? And we have a lot of different theories about what had happened that night. There were persons of interest that we have come to learn about, who we've never been able to clear in this case the way we'd like to, for one reason or another. There were witnesses to the event, people around. I mean, in Lewiston, you have those dense neighborhoods. You like to think somebody would have heard something, somebody would have seen something. And in fact, we did get a lot of information from those neighborhood canvases where certain people heard things at different times of the night. So we had to try and, put together who heard what at what time and where is our concentration of suspicion about when this thing may have happened. Once you figure that out, then you have to figure out, okay, what did other people see who might have been driving by around that particular time? And because, if you come up with the wrong time for when you think this thing might have happened, you're looking at the wrong time frame for the people who would have seen something suspicious happen. So you take the whole thing in totality, and there's a lot of information. And this is one of those cases where there's not a shortage of information, there's a deluge of information that we have that you try and put together and make sense of what might have happened that night.
Who found her in the morning?
I believe it was a gentleman who was walking his dog that morning. Matter of fact, I think the paper boy had gone through passing the newspaper at that time, and I'm not sure that they saw anything. We don't believe that they would have gone. That's the route where they would have seen her, but a gentleman walking his dog did.
Okay.
And he reported it.
So, she's there sometime between 11 p.m. and 4:40 a.m. presumably, right?
Right.
Most people are sleeping, but Lisbon Street's a busy street in
It
Lewiston.
is, especially on a Friday night, and especially during 1976. Lisbon Street was a wild ride in 1976, and looking back on it at that time, it was very, very busy with people coming and going from the bars and from the social clubs that were down on Lisbon Street, and that's how we have a lot of the information that we have from people who were driving by, witnesses who did see her doing the laundry, witnesses who looked in and did not see her doing. So we have a decent time frame as to when we think things happened. And then we have different vehicles that may have been involved that took off suspiciously, that might have been seen racing up and down Lisbon Street. But as we know from 1976 on Lisbon Street in Lewiston, cars racing up and down and cutting people off might not have been uncommon. So it's a matter of putting it together at the actual time when you think things had occurred and we have a lot of information. But what we don't have is the specific information that might put us over the top in this case. And it's much like our other cold cases where you're so close to having something that puts this case to rest, and you need just one more little piece of information that somebody might have that could lead to some finality here, that could let us maybe go forward with some kind of indictment with someone.
Gotcha. We have a couple of different bases to cover here. So the time frame, have you narrowed it down to a certain, hour or 2 hour window, or?
I think we're comfortable saying that between 2:30 in the morning and 4 o'clock in the morning is when is kind of the window that we think things occurred.
Was there anybody else in the laundromat at the time, do you know?
No, there doesn't appear to be. Witnesses don't really show or speak about anybody else being in the laundromat. We don't believe anybody was in the laundromat. Like I said, we do have police officers driving by who noticed that she's in there. She's by herself. She's folding laundry, and noticed that she was in there for a length of time, for an hour and a half or so, doing that laundry.
I'm gonna just clean this off real quick because it looks like it's fogging up, and I don't know why, but I don't want it to be foggy while you're talking.
I've got a lot of hot air. Chris, it's just
Well, so do I.
try.
That's
I do my best to deal with it.
That's my wife. I've got a lot of hot air. Yeah, that's much better. Okay. So are we? Is the rationale or the line of thinking that somebody drove up to the laundromat and beat her to death?
Well, and so, there's been a lot of theories about, did she know the person? Did she come out of the laundromat willingly? We don't have any indication that she didn't come out of the laundromat willingly, and yet she ends up outside the laundromat next to the side of the building, and that's where this event occurs.
It was the autopsy, blunt force trauma to the head?
I believe so, yes. I believe that's exactly how it's...
Was it an object? Or was it a fist? Do we have any idea?
We don't believe it was hands, fists, feet, kind of an altercation. And without getting into the evidence and what we have for specific items of evidence, it's very possible that could have played a role, hands, fists, or feet, kind of
As part of the altercation.
as part of the altercation. But we do believe there was something else
Like
too.
an object of
Right.
some kind.
Right.
Got it. Okay. What did you guys find inside the laundromat? I mean, was there blood in the laundromat, or did this all take place outside?
We believe it all took place outside the laundromat, which is why there's a prevailing theory that maybe she knew the person. Somebody, she would have gone outside to see somebody she knows. Maybe there was some kind of an altercation that was happening outside that she went and left the building to investigate, or something that piqued her interest outside. Inside the building, it looks like she's just been doing laundry. We have folded clothes. We have some money. She had actually tried to use one of the washing machines and had left a note because it wasn't working properly. So, it's clear to us that she had been doing her laundry. She went there with that intent to do her laundry. We don't believe that there was an intent to see somebody or meet somebody at that point, or at least not that we've been able to say for sure.
So do we know at this point, or is there a theory of, because you talked about this a minute ago, we're thinking this is somebody who knew her, or she knew?
Yes. I think you can't close the book on the other side of the house where, is this a random guy that walks by and maybe he says that he's hurt, or maybe he needs help with his tire outside. I don't think we can close the door on that kind of an event, but I think for all intents and purposes, we believe that she went outside because it was somebody that she might have known.
I mean, it's not like this guy was trying to, beat her up and take her money. It doesn't appear to be the case.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah, we don't believe that there was any other motive involved here. So that's one of the prevailing reasons why we think that she would have known somebody here, because doesn't appear to be any other motivation.
How many persons of interest are there in this case? More than, I don't know that sometimes you can't get into the specifics, but would you say it's more than 5?
I would say 5 is a reasonable number of people that we haven't been able to really closed the door on entirely. I think that, you know, you always like to leave an open mind for certain people, and you know, and that complicates things, because at over 30, 40 years, you know, you like to think that you'll get a little bit closer to narrowing it down with certain people. And we've gone back and done interviews with people over and over and over again. This has been a frustrating case, not only for the Maine State Police, but absolutely for the family, who has struggled all this time without answers.
One thing. I'm gonna make one change and then keep on going. I'm gonna try putting this on this side and see if it helps. Not helps.
Yep.
Changes things up a little bit for us.
We can move that plant back too if you want.
Is this-
Trying to keep her healthy.
Yeah. Let's see. I want to make sure that I'm not. Oops. Let's see here. All right, I'm gonna turn this. Yeah, that is better. I am gonna do one thing because of your glasses with this. Yeah, I like that. You worked on this case. I mean, this is one
I
that
did.
you worked
Yep.
on personally.
I did.
I would imagine there's some frustration there for you too.
There is, you know, because you know, one thing that people don't realize is that as detectives, you know, say you have 12 detectives, and as an analogy, say you've got 25 cold cases, and every detective has 2 or so cold cases. You come to know those cold cases really well. You come to know those dates and those anniversaries, and they become dates and anniversaries that are ingrained in your mind. You know, I think of the family when November 6th comes around. I think of the family. I think of a mom and dad who never got answers before they passed away, that I had told them that I was going to do my best, you know, to give them those answers, to provide them those answers. And you know, it's a responsibility that we don't take lightly. But it's a formidable task to go back in time. And in 1976, I wasn't very old. I was a toddler. And so, you know, you're inheriting a case that had been put together well, but there's so much information there. It takes a lot of focus, and it takes a real team effort to put together, you know, a good theory of the case, and focus on narrowing down your list of suspects.
Well, especially with the amount of information you have. I would imagine that in some cases, and you should correct me on this, but I would imagine in some cases, when you have, you know, a kind of a limited amount of information in terms of, we know she was, you know, this person was at this place at this time, and then at this point, you know, they're found dead.
Right.
But when you have so many different witnesses on a busy street with, you know, bars around and
Right.
apartments and homes and so on and so forth,
Right.
I would imagine you get a lot of
Red herrings.
and contradicting
You
information.
do. You get a lot of contradictory information, you get a lot of red herrings, and you have to chase all of those red herrings down. And that's with any case. You know, you might think from the very start that somebody comes to report something to you, and you think there's no way that this is going to work. It just doesn't seem to fit in our theory of the case. We can't just ignore that. We have to investigate that and continue forward and press forward, pushing forward with that information until we can rule it out officially as not having been involved in the case. But, you know, there's so much information, so many witnesses, so many people that were watching the news that night, watching something early in the morning, might have heard something outside on the back porch. You know, is that when the event occurred, or was it when they heard somebody else down the street heard a scream, but yet they were further away than this person was? So you know, you try and put that information together, and you're right. It's more difficult sometimes when you have a great deal of information, whereas when you have a much more focused investigation with fewer witnesses and more reliable information, it makes it a little bit easier to narrow down.
Okay. Let me check my notes here, because we have covered a good amount. Oh, I got an update on OSHA. We can talk about that later. The family had put up, I believe, is it now up to $10,000 reward? I'll have to check with Tanya.
Yeah, I think so. Check with Tanya. I can't remember what the reward amount is.
Okay.
Usually on the law enforcement side of the house, I try not to concern myself too much with the rewards, because we don't really have anything to do with it.
And it's family money.
And it's family money. The family put that up, yeah, and it's usually not anything we like to have any bearing on the investigation.
That's fine. Do state police don't ever really offer rewards in cases? Is that right?
Correct. We don't. It usually comes from the family, and the victim advocates work with the family, and the family sets that up on their own with their own private attorney, and yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and sometimes it's helpful. Sometimes it generates information. In this case, it may have generated information over the years. I don't know when that reward was officially released.
It started at 5,000, I think, in 2006, and then I think
Right.
in 2015 it went up to 10.
Right.
So I'll have to check with them and see where it is now.
But it's the kind of thing where I don't remember somebody coming forward and saying, by the way, I have this information. I know there's a reward on this. I'd like to provide X, Y, and Z as information in consideration of the reward. I haven't seen that in this case.
We would probably be a lot closer.
We might be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We talked about this. You know, when you take a step back and you look at this case, especially now 45 years since it happened, what's your reaction to it? I guess because when I was reading the details, and again, I don't have the intimate knowledge that you do, but I was kind of like, was this random? Was this somebody who knows her? It seems like now the indication is it's probably something that she had a reason to go outside. Maybe she knew them. Maybe it was something else. But I mean, when you take a step back and look at this case, like how do you evaluate this? Or what do you look at? What do you think about when you look at it?
Well, one of the things that I focus on are the details. You know, did somebody ever, did they do the same things that we would have done today? Did they do a quality canvas of the neighborhood? Because especially in that area of Lewiston, if they did a canvas, but they might have missed one or two apartments, which, you know, you knock on the door, nobody's there, you know, 2 days later, do you go back and knock on the door again like we would today to make sure you've got everybody? Or did they just keep going? You know, so it's I think the devil's in the details here, whereas, and especially back in the day when they collected evidence, did they have that evidence reanalyzed over the years with new instrumentation, with the new technology we have today? Did they look at the evidence of the crime scene with the eye of a reconstructionist that we would have today, which they might not have had back in the day? So when you're assessing these cases, I think you look at it with a fresh eye in the mind of, would we have done, you know, were the same things done then that we would do today, and what's missing?
Sure.
What's missing here?
What is missing here?
Right. I think what's missing is that piece of information that we need, possibly from the public that might be able to give it to us. Maybe they've been afraid to come forward in the past, and we'd love to listen to them. We'd love to talk to them. Maybe they might have been a little kid in that apartment building at the time. Maybe they were woken up by something. Maybe they saw something out their window. That's the kind of person that we're looking for, because we know at that hour of night, you know, in Lewiston, there were people up, there were people around, there were people driving by, there were people moving around. Somebody should have seen something, and we just haven't gotten that piece of information that puts us there yet.
The family had mentioned they were hoping that, like you just mentioned, new technology, that some of the evidence could be reanalyzed with, you know, some of the DNA technology that's available right now. Has that been done?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And has that proven, or has it led you anywhere?
No, it has not led us anywhere. But again, when you're looking at a crime scene, and back in the day when they're collecting evidence from 1976, it's also possible that they were not collecting evidence in light of recognizing that DNA technology would become a thing.
Right.
11 years later, in 1987, I think, was the first case in this country where DNA.
Hit your mouse real quick. Sorry.
Oh.
Your screen went blank. Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to. You have to get back in there. We lost your logo, and I want to make sure your logo behind you.
Sure.
But I get what you're saying, right? There was a collecting of evidence in a time where there are no floating cars, for example.
That's
right.
right.
You're not going to collect evidence in a way that you would today.
That's right. I mean, they were probably not. They probably never dreamed back in 1976 that touch DNA, looking for the epithelial cells on things would be something not only that would be possible, that you could get a suspect's DNA on an item that was used as a weapon, but also that when they're collecting the evidence, to take precautions against leaving their own DNA behind. So it's a catch-22 from back in those days when we think about, DNA evidence being available today and applying that to even cases where people have been convicted today. It's very difficult, and you have to be sure that you understand and interpret the DNA correctly. Just because you may have mystery DNA on an object may not necessarily mean that's the suspect. It could be from the medical examiner's office. It could have been from collection of the officers at the time.
Hair in the laundry machine from somebody else.
Yeah, it just, you have to be careful about how you interpret that DNA evidence.
Okay. We've touched on a lot, and I want to be sensitive to your time. But is there, what have we not touched on that you think we need to mention?
I think it's the fact that, the family, you have the little kids here, her young kids who have survived this event that are looking for that closure. In the past we've talked about parents that are looking for closure, and they have been the predominant people pushing law enforcement, to work on these cases regularly. In this particular case, it's the victim's daughters, who woke up that morning and didn't have mom anymore. As these dates, these anniversaries come around, and I know for a lot of people, they see them on our Facebook page. They comment on them on our Facebook page. But to a lot of these detectives, I can't imagine that when I finish my career that I'm not going to remember what this date means to that family. And there are other dates in my career that I look back and, I think of those families. And it means a lot to us as we try and bring resolution to these cases for those families.
I think about it the other way around, waking up one morning and not having my kid.
Yeah.
I can't imagine being a kid, waking up and not having a mom.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's heartbreaking.
Yeah, it is. It is. And Tanya's been waiting for answers for, 45 years. And it's sad. It's one thing, as the parents, passed away through the years in this case, but it's another thing when, it's your mom.
How close are state police to solving this?
I think that with the right information, it could be a matter of being weeks away from being resolved. Because this case, again, there's so much information. There isn't a lot that we don't have answers to about all of the people on the periphery, all of the persons of interest. I think it's just the right information to get us over the top in this case. And just like so many other cases, you're so close, but yet you're just not quite there. It's not ready for a courtroom yet.
So let me ask this way. If it's inappropriate, you tell me. But do you think of those 5 people of interest, are you waiting for one of them to admit to something?
I think after all this time, I think admitting something would be, obviously admirable for the family. But I think in the end, it's going to be other things that push that person over the top to, whether it's an interview with that person, whether it's information that's contradictory to what they've already provided for information, and doing a good interview with that person for one final time, and you never know where it's going to go.
Okay. Because I don't want to assume that any of those 5 people are necessarily guilty,
Right.
just because they're people of interest. But I wasn't sure if it's like, we're pretty sure it's one of these 5 people, and we need them to tell us, yeah, it was me.
Right.
Okay. So
Right.
it might be that case.
Right. Well, and I think that with those people, if you ask the different investigators, they'll have their different theories of the case. And I think depending on your theory of the case, which again, one more piece of information leads us to conclude that this is the way it happened. It wasn't this way, it wasn't this way, it wasn't at this time. It was this way, it was the way it happened, and that narrows the focus to only one person, whereas the other ones get eliminated with that information. And I think that's kind of what we're looking for, is that person that might have seen something that haven't yet reported it.
So of those 5, is there information that they could give you that would eliminate them as persons of interest?
I think to the extent that they can, many of them have. It's just a matter of corroborating and verifying that information, which a lot of it has been. But you never know what information you're going to get that is going to push us over the top with one prevailing theory of the case.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Do these 5 people of interest, do they all know each other?
I think so. Or at the time they did, and maybe over time they've kind of, I'm sure after 45 years, relationships weaken, or some strengthen, and relationships change for sure. And I'm sure that at the time they all knew each other. Yeah.
Okay. I think that's it from me.
Okay.
Is there something you think I left
No.
out that you think we should have mentioned?
I don't think so. I think Tanya was going to give you a more, I think she's going to give you a better emotional look
Sure.
at what this has meant for her over the last
Yes.
45 years. And,
Yeah.
when I first started meeting with Tanya in 2007, working on this case, and had it for the next 5 years, and did my best to go back and tighten the case up. I mean, as a detective, you go, oh, we never did a diagram, we never did measurements of this, we never did that, and so you go back and you just tighten the case up a little bit more. So that's what I'm saying. When in these cases, when they finally, when things start to crumble for one particular theory, or I should say, when one particular theory starts to become stronger, and you start to look at that as being, this is the only thing that makes sense in this case now, and because of that, this is the only person that could have done that based on this new information that we have, that's when you kind of go back and you look at these cases and you go, it's hard to believe that you could think anything otherwise. But again, it's just one or two more pieces of information is all we need. Yeah.
I think we're good. Hey, thank you. Thanks for
You're
making
welcome.
the time.
Of course. Thank you.